Okay, so welcome everyone to the third reading of the Theaetetus. And as usual, I would like to invite someone or more than one persons to give a kind of summary of what we discussed last time. So no one is willing?
Well, hi.
You know,
I wasn't there last. You started last time, right? It was the
no,
first reading.
last time it was the second reading.
Oh, okay. Well, I will keep shut then. I'll listen to those who were there.
Okay, so you have 5 seconds to decide. If not, you wouldn't have to bear one of my speech. So maybe it would encourage you to say something.
I want to hear your speech.
Oh, but I can give my speech after. I want to hear your speeches too.
Well, I would just remind everyone about Semyon 1, right, which was the idea of truth as sense perception. And then we were just going into Semyon 2, I believe.
Exactly. We went through Semyon 1, 2, and 3, meaning the animal kingdom or the animal mind or doxa opinion. Can you give us those 3 layers?
Sorry, the animal. So layer 1 was the sense perception, layer 2 was the intellect, and then layer 3 is the psyche. And there was I forget which one was related to the lawyers at the end.
Let's say one lawyer by himself would be Semyon 2, but a lot of lawyers together fomenting the shenanigans would be Semyon 3.
Right, okay.
Right, so number 2, if I remember right, so number 1 is just sense perception, number 2 is authority, I believe, and the manipulation of images, one is groups, so public opinions, and that's Semyon 3, I believe, so it's a group of lawyers, right? It's like all the experts say. Second is just the manipulation of sense perceptions, and the first is sense perceptions themselves.
Exactly, and each line by itself is absolutely okay, but in the sense that there's nothing wrong with sense perception, there's nothing wrong with intellect spinning images and words and concept, and there's nothing wrong to be together, to discuss, and to have a common opinion. It's only when you are together to impose your system is what we call the oligarchy. Because after all, we are together tonight to have a kind of Semyon 3. We discuss together to share our opinion, but we don't have the intention to impose our opinions to no one, unless there is a hidden oligarch among us, of course.
Of course.
Where do I sign up?
I hope, Paul, that you have at least 1 billion in your bank account to sign up for that.
Right, yeah.
And technically, Semyon 4 is it begins into the realm of timelessness, and Semyon 4 is the transcendent. So there's beauty, there's truth, and there's goodness. So there's not really Semyon 5 or 6. They're just all infinite transcendence from 4 up. Different degrees of awareness of these transcendents.
Absolutely. 4, 5, 6 are together, okay? They are a unity, what Socrates called the unity of virtue, okay? And that is one concept which is a little bit difficult in the Socratic dialogues. It's the idea of the unity of virtue. And as you said, Dave, it's the question of awareness. And the awareness of the 3 timeless forms, meaning by order of by ascending order: beauty, Simeon 4, Simeon 5, goodness, agape, and Simeon 6, truth. But their separation is artificial. You have to see them as an unity.
One thing I picked up the other last week was about we all see different qualities in our from our senses, and what might feel one thing to me might feel something totally different to you. And so what am I saying? That's not necessarily where truth lies.
Exactly. I would say that I'm happy that you mentioned that. Okay, that's the theory by Protagoras that in Greek is called panton, metron, anthropos. Okay, meaning that each man has his own truth. Okay, panton means every, and metron means the measure, and anthropos means man. Okay, so each man his own truth. So it's okay if it only at the level of personal experience, and panton, metron, anthropos is absolutely true at the level of subjective personal experience, but it cannot be considered as episteme, as true knowledge, universal knowledge.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we're going to find out, I guess.
Exactly. And last question maybe on this. Can anyone mention the two major arguments proving without doubt that sense of perception cannot be episteme, cannot be true knowledge? And
Well,
it was, yes, please.
Well, so the reason knowledge is understanding, and you can have partial knowledge, you know, because obviously nobody has full knowledge, right? I mean, we're all working towards as much knowledge as we can get. And yeah, that's about, I don't know. I guess that's why knowledge is not perception. It's
Yeah. I give you a clue. Okay, it's about you with your eyes closed and with your eyes open. If you remember that argument.
yeah, right. But you're seeing with your mind, not your eyes.
Yes, exact. If a truth is sense perception, meaning that if you close your eyes and you still have a mind representation of what you saw with your eyes open, the stuff that you saw with eyes open cannot be episteme, cannot be true knowledge, because you have another representation copying what you saw with your eyes open. So it's called an argument by reductio absurdum, in the sense that it's absurd that you can have another situation in which you don't have direct sense of perception, and you still have a kind of representation with the image within your mind. Okay, so that's a very strong argument. What is the other one? If someone remember the other one, and it has to do precisely with lawyers and with Semyon 3, with experts. Okay, let's forget the lawyers, with experts.
Okay, well, I'm not exactly sure what you're looking for, but I had wanted to say that it was that section where he started talking about the lawyers that really made an impact on me, because they are so heavily trained to win an argument. But the point really made it through to me heavily that those that are kind of stuck at the level of intellect, those are actually the ones that are most easily manipulated by other intellects.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a very strong point that you offer.
And so for me, where I'm coming from, if someone is kind of stuck in their head, then appeal to their heart, and you can get them out of their head. And beauty and music and art that has beauty, truth, and goodness in it will appeal to the heart.
Exactly. And
so
here,
I can't condense what we've been through, but this is so very rich.
Yeah.
I just want to say something very important in link with what Susan just said. The number 3, Semyon 3, is also called the heart, okay? Because I prefer the word, I prefer the word the psyche, but it's also called the heart. Let's not forget that at Semyon 3, those people receive something of the divine, okay? And let's not forget that Plato called them the fake democratic man, okay? And at Semyon 4, those are the true one. But at Semyon 3, why they have a certain prestige? Because they have some drops from the soul. They have something of the divine. That's why they appear divine for people who are not prepared by higher energies, okay? And that's why we call it the heart also, because those people are not completely dumb and they are not completely evil, because sometimes they have something of the divine, and because of those drops from the soul, they might appear very impressive and they can mesmerize people. And the heart is also called the inchoate soul, okay? For the people who don't know what is inchoate means, it means the beginning soul. So inchoate, I-N-C-H-O-A-T-E.
In terms of those descriptors, Kwan, where would you put intuition?
Intuition is higher. Intuition is when you have direct vision, okay? Intuition, what is intuition after all? Intuition is when you get the right answer, but you don't know why you got that right answer, okay? That's intuition, okay? That's direct vision, and that's the number 5. That's cosmos, okay? But when you have the cosmos, normally you get the answer by intuition, by direct vision, but someone at the level of epistemological development of the aristocratic man, sometimes he will get the direct answer without knowing why, but that man or that woman has a good intellect too, okay? So he will think about the answer that he got by direct vision, and he will manage to explain it by the intellect after reflection. But it was not the intellect that gave him the answer. It was a direct vision.
That's yummy. Because to me, intuition is like the divine mind coming through.
I'll drink to that, Susan.
But I also want to say with what Kelly said about, we all see things our own way. It has become very, very real to me recently. Okay, like Kwan talked in our previous discussions about free will. If God didn't give us free will, he wouldn't have been perfect. We each are allowed our process of discovery, and we need to allow that for others in our lives as well, and not impose our views on them. We can appeal to them, we can invite them, but we cannot impose. And that's like the very opposite of what this oligarchical structure does. But free will and the ability to go through your own process to find truth, that is hugely important.
Absolutely. And I did not forget my question. Do someone remember the second major argument why sense of perception cannot be truth? Okay, we gave the first one, the eyes open, the eyes closed. What is the second one? I want to repeat that because it's very important, okay? You guys need to remember those 2 arguments, because that is the Protagoras shenanigan to mesmerize people. Let's not forget the Protagoras was an agent of the oligarchy 24 centuries ago. So
okay, so is it something about your present condition can change what you are perceiving?
Yes, but it's about it's linked to the fact that each man has his own truth, okay? The panton, metron, anthropos. Each man has his own truth. And the counter argument, which is perfect, okay, which destroy completely the idea, the sense of perception is the truth or the good true knowledge, is that if each man has his own truth, why would you prefer to see Dr. X versus Dr. Y as your physician? Because you think that Dr. X is better in his art, okay? If he's better in his art, it means that there is a hierarchy in understanding and in skills. So you cannot say that each man has his own truth. If you take that example of two doctors, one being more skilled than the other, but it can be any professionals, it can be an architect, it can be a lawyer precisely, or it can be anyone.
You want the truth that gets results.
Well, that get results not only on the empirical level, but meaning that that person has a deeper knowledge of his field. If he has a deeper knowledge of his field, you cannot say that truth is subjective to each one. That each doctor can have his own truth about the medicine.
Yeah, but yeah, like you believe something, but like it's fine if you believe it. You have to like you have to show proof, like almost like in a physical way, right?
Exactly. Once again, I go back to the example of two different doctors having different level of skills. You know, the patients, they will go to the one capable to cure them. So there is a difference. So it's not subjective. You cannot say that each doctor has his own truth about medicine. Do you guys see the point?
Yeah, but I'll ask a point of clarification. How would you define the difference between allopathic medicine and, let's say, Eastern medicine? And I'm thinking of, acupuncture, acupressure, those sorts of things. Ayurvedic medicine even.
Oh, I would say that it would be
a different level of truth, surely.
It would be the same criterion of assessment, meaning that in Ayurvedic medicine or in acupuncture, they are practitioners who are better than their colleagues and who would be chosen preferentially by their patients. So it's the same criterion of quality and of being more skilled. So
would there be an inherent difference? I mean, what I know about allopathic medicine, for example, doesn't give me much faith in doctors in the West, full stop. My experience, on the other hand, of things like acupuncture leads me to have more faith in that as a system of medicine. So there's a higher truth for me.
I would say that allopathic medicine is maybe more holistic, taking into account the whole person. And the Western medicine is not a bad medicine. Well, I'm biased here because I'm a doctor of Western medicine, okay? But it's more based on the fact that the concept of anatomy and physiology, okay? Western medicine is based on the premise that you have to understand the organ and the system, the integrated system of the organs, okay? It's not necessarily a bad idea, but it's less holistic. And I would say that it's not the basic idea of Western medicine, which is bad. I think that it's simply that maybe in the last 2 generations, the Western doctors became too obsessed with the pharmaceutical treatments rather than to see the person holistically. Because with the idea, with the foundational idea of Western medicine, meaning the organs and the integrated system of the organs, you can have a holistic approach. It's not mutually exclusive. So it's more the attitude, I would say.
Okay.
And as usual, I feel like most of what we're talking about is really a few grades beyond my present level of understanding. But to me, it's that you literally can feel that some of it is more complete knowledge. none
Thank
of
you
us
for-
have all truth, but some of us have a little more of a complete picture in whatever aspect of truth we're looking at. And you can just kind of feel it by intuition that, okay, this one is going to work better because it's more complete.
Yes, and I would say even having the open-minded attitude, okay? Because let's not forget that the core of an aristocratic man, even if he's very knowledgeable, he always think that it's only a part of reality and it's only an interpretation of
Yes.
reality, and he always see the universe as something infinite to be explored to the end of his life. That is the core of agape.
Yes. Beautiful.
When you say quality, is quality a part of essence, or is it just a descriptive word?
What word? I'm sorry. Did you say
Oh.
agape?
Quality, like, is quality a part of essence, or is it more of a descriptor?
Oh, I would say it's part of essence. It's more that openness. If you want, I would say that is the openness.
So it's the one description. All the other descriptions, like bigger, taller, those are descriptions. Those are qualities that aren't part of the, or they're descriptions that are not part of the essence.
Exactly. I'm very happy you said that, because I almost forgot. If someone asked you, explain me in a simple manner the difference between earth and heaven, or if you want, the animal kingdom and the divine kingdom, or the animal mind and the divine mind, I wouldn't give you the answer for the animal mind and try to find for the divine mind. Okay, the animal mind is more obsessed with the question what. Okay, the description what. Okay, the animal mind are preoccupied with the what questions. Okay, the sense perception what, intellect what words, what concept, what images. Okay, the psyche what consensus, what conventional truth. Okay, so that's the animal mind. What questions. Okay, when, where, how. It's also part of what. Okay, what, when, where, how. Now the divine kingdom is characterized with one kind of special question that the children always ask. Okay, what kind of question?
Why?
Why exactly? So if you have to explain very simply what is the difference between the animal mind and the divine mind, the animal mind is obsessed with what, and with measure too, because what you would want to measure things, okay, taller, smaller, etc. But when you go to the divine mind of beauty, goodness, and truth, you wouldn't ask the question why, because the first philosophical question is why the universe. Okay, that is the first philosophical question. And that is truly a divine question.
That is so precious. And it just goes to show children are closer to the divine mind because they just came from there.
No, but you're right, Susie, because children are natural aristocratic man till the age of 4 or 5.
Oh, help us no longer squash that.
I can't help but reflect. I mentioned it here that, on a teaching round that I went to, it was the kids in grade 2, so around 7 and 8, maybe 9, who still had that. And yet 2 years later, in the same school, the kids had completely lost it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we
Lost it is the wrong description. It was taken away.
Yeah.
Lost it is the wrong word. It was taken away from them.
Okay. So I think that we managed to cover the essential of what we discussed last time. Do someone has something to say before we start the reading for today? Okay, Dave, you're there? Is our Socrates? Did
Yes, I
Socrates
am. I
leave?
was just muted. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's go. So everyone remember it's page 63. And Socrates will start. So Paul, you will keep on to be Theaetetus. Were you Theaetetus, Paul?
Yes, I was.
Okay, do you want to keep on? I think it's a good idea.
Fine. Yeah, sure. Look, I've actually read ahead, you know, of much of what we're starting with today, and I'll end up being pretty quiet. Theaetetus, much of a leg in here. Susie, get ready. You're up.
Okay, so Susie, you still want to be Theodorus?
Okay, where are we?
Page 63,
Section 24.
24.
I'm wondering if I need to move what's on my screen because I'm seeing Socrates first.
Yeah.
No,
that's-
it's good. It's good.
You're in the right place.
Okay, so where do I start?
I start.
Yeah,
Socrates.
Socrates start. Okay, let's go.
Oh, you're just asking me if I'm ready to kick in when necessary. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I'm just
and,
that much of the discussion that I've, you know, read ahead on is a discussion between Socrates and Theodorus.
okay, so Susan, you remember you Theodorus, of course.
Okay.
Okay, let's
Okay.
go. Let's go.
Okay, let's take it away. Big shoes to fill here. All right, Socrates. Let us proceed then to our description, as it seems we must, and as such is your pleasure, taking the best specimens of the class. For why should one mention such as spend their time in philosophy? For why should one mention such as spend their time in philosophy to little or no purpose? Well, then your best men, I suppose, in the first place, do not so much as know their way into the agora at all, nor the site of any law court, or the council hall, or any other meeting place in the city. And as for laws and decrees of the people, neither see them written nor hear them read. Much less do they know of the secret intrigues of political parties for securing to themselves state offices and reasonable meetings and dinners and serenades with your danseurs. They don't even dream of doing such things. Then whether any citizen is well-born or ill-born, or what harm attaches to anyone by hereditary descent, either from the male or the female line, they know no more than, as the proverb is, how many quarts there are of seawater. Nay, he doesn't even know that he doesn't know all this. For 'tis not to be supposed that he keeps out of the way of such things for the sake of credit, but in real truth his body alone is there in the city and in town, while his mind and thoughts regarding all such concernments are trifling and mere nothings. Despise them and soar all abroad, measuring, as Pindar says, the regions below the earth and those upon it, star-gazing in heaven's heights, and investigating fully the true nature of the phenomena of each and every part of the universe, never bringing themselves down to the level of any of the objects that are near.
In what sense do you say this, Socrates?
Just as Thales, Theodore, when he was stargazing and had his eyes on the sky, contrived to tumble into a pit, and so incurred the ridicule of a smart and pretty Thracian slave girl for being so eager to know what was in heaven above him, while he failed to notice what lay before him as his very feet. So the same badger holds good against all who devote their time to philosophy. It is simply true that persons of that profession know nothing about other people, even their own neighbors, not only as to their occupations, but almost whether they are human beings at all, or some other kind of creature. No. What man is, and what better objects and destinies such a nature has than the lower animals, that is what he not only inquires, but takes pains thoroughly to understand. You see what I mean, Theodore, don't you?
I do. What you say is quite true.
And the consequences, my friend, that your philosopher, both in his private dealings and intercourse, and in his public appearance on any occasion, when he is obliged to talk either in law court or elsewhere about matters before his feet and in his sight, makes himself ridiculous, not merely to Thracian slave girls, but to the people generally, by tumbling into pits and into every sort of puzzle through want of practice. And his awkwardness is something terrible to see, and suggests the notion that he must be a downright fool. For in the attacks on people's characters, he has nothing personal to say against anyone, as knowing no harm of anybody from the want of practice. And thus, from being at a loss, he appears ridiculous. So too in the praises and high-flown eulogies of others, by letting people see that he laughs not affectedly, but in all sincerity, he is regarded as a silly giggler. When he hears an encomium on a tyrant or a king, he imagines that he hears one of your stock keepers, a swineherd, for instance, a shepherd, or a neat herd, called happy for draining a great deal of milk. Only he thinks that kings feed and suck an animal more discontented and more fond of laying plots than the herdsmen do. He thinks, moreover, that such a potentate must of necessity be quite as churlish and uninformed as the herdsmen are. From his want of leisure, seated as he is in his castle on a hill like a shepherd in the midst of his fold. And when he is told that someone who owns 10,000 or more plethora of land possesses an astonishing quality, he imagines that what he hears is but a very small amount, accustomed as he is to look at the whole world. And when they speak in praise of men's pedigrees, and to tell you that so-and-so is of high birth because he can show 7 rich ancestors, he regards such a commendation as coming from people who see dimly and only a few years back, and who from defect of education cannot have their eyes always on the universe, nor consider that every individual has had countless myriads of ancestors, in which rich and poor, kings and slaves, foreign and Greek, have been born into the world in millions for every one. But he who may. But when men pride themselves on a list of 25 forefathers and carry back a pedigree to Hercules, the son of Amphitryon, it does seem to him surprising that they should make these trumpery reckonings. And he laughs at them for not being able to see that the 25th from Amphitryon, still further back, was just what fortune happened to make him. And so to get rid of the conceit of a senseless mind. In all such cases, then as the above, a character of this kind is ridiculed by the many, partly for being proud, as he is thought, partly for not knowing the most obvious facts, and being at a loss on every occasion.
You describe, Socrates, exactly what happens in the world.
But when, my friend, he, the philosopher, has drawn some of these men of law above the level of their courts, in other words, when someone has consented at his request to exceed the narrow limits of what harm do I do to you or you to me, and to rise to the contemplation of justice and injustice in its true nature, what each of them is, and how they differ from each other and from everything else, and to leave such questions as whether a king is happy because he owns much gold, for inquiries about the nature of sovereignty and of human happiness and misery in general, what these two things really are, and in what way it is the duty of one who is by birth human to attain the one and to escape the other, when it comes to the turn of that small-minded but shrewd man of law to give his views on all these subjects, then he plays the counterpart of the philosopher in the courts. He is giddy from being suspended aloft, and looking upwards from his height, he loses heart from being so unused to it. Then he gets perplexed, and by his unintelligible talk, he makes himself laughed at, not indeed by Thracian slave girls, nor by anyone else who is uneducated, for they are not intelligent enough, but by all who have an education of the contrary kind to slaves. Such, Theodore, is the character of each. The one, that of a person brought up in reality with the ideas of a gentleman and with leisure at his disposal, the philosopher, in fact, as you call him, who may be excused for seeming a simpleton and a mere nobody when he is suddenly required to do the services of a slave. For instance, if he does not know how to pack a portmanteau, or to flavor a relishing dish, or words of flattery. The other is the character of one who knows how to perform all these services thoroughly and promptly when called upon, but does not know how to throw his mantle over his right shoulder like a freeborn gentleman, much less has acquired the fitting language for rightly praising the true life of the gods and of happy men.
Okay, maybe we can stop
Oh.
here. Maybe we can stop here. Can you? Is someone willing to explain me what is the dimension that is explained here? Let's not forget that we stopped at Semyon 3 last time. Okay, it's related to that.
And is he necessarily referring to is it still like referring to Protagoras technically, like, or indirectly, or would you say?
Yes, in the sense that if I speak of Semyon 3, it includes 1 and 2. Okay,
and Protagoras is Simeon 1, right? His arguments.
Exactly. Yeah. Protagoras is Simeon 1.
Okay.
So maybe I will write something that might help you. But he does not know how to throw his mantle over his right shoulder like a freeborn gentleman. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? Is it a social role? Okay. It's a social role. So, for example, in the upper class in America, nobody say a tuxedo. Okay. It's called a dinner jacket. Okay. If you go in the high society in New York, never say tuxedo. You have to say a dinner jacket. So it's a social role. Okay, as the fact that you throw your mantle over your right shoulder as a social rule. It could have been the left, but the upper class decided that a gentleman put his mantle over his right shoulder as a role imposed by Simon III. Okay.
And Simeon 3 is?
The consensus of expert of the ruling class.
Okay.
Social
convention, exactly. As in the upper class in New York, if you say a tuxedo, you immediately identify is someone not of the upper class because you have to say dinner jacket.
I'd like clarification just because he's like contrasting between two different kinds of people, right? He's talking about one who looks silly in front of, the Thracian slave girls and whatnot. And then the other who is a philosopher or is able to play the part of philosopher and talk the talk in the courts.
Exactly.
But
if you remember, sorry, keep on.
Oh, the thing that caught my eye, I'd need to probably reread it. But when someone is, what harm do I do to you or you to me? And he can't and rise to contemplation of justice and injustice in its true nature. What each of them is and how they differ from each other and from everything else, and to leave such questions as whether a king is happy because he owns much gold, for inquiries about the nature of sovereignty and of human happiness and misery in general, what these two things really are, and in what way it is the duty of one who is by birth human to attain the one and to escape the other, when it comes to the turn of that small-minded but shrewd man of law to give his views on all these subjects, then he plays the counterpart of the philosopher in the courts. He is giddy from being suspended aloft.
Exactly. And I would like to read the little note one because I wanted to talk about the Gorgias, and I noticed that the translator had the same idea than me. So it's note 1 of page 67. Okay. As in the Gorgias, where he calls rhetoric mageirike, Plato refers to the Setores and the lay under the disguised name of slaves. The general census is that a philosopher need not know how to cook, but a cook, meaning a politician, ought to know something about justice. The meaning is cleverly disguised, the point being to disparage the lawyers as an illiberal, uneducated set, slaves in mind, if not in social position. Okay, so I see that that translator is not bad at all, because that is essential, and how bad that he put that as a note and not, but he doesn't have the choice. He cannot intervene in the text by itself. So the idea here is precisely the and in the Gorgias, if you read the Gorgias, if you remember, Callias, a rich plutocrat, was mocking Socrates that in his own age he was still discussing philosophy, and it's supposed only to be for teenager. All right, so here. Let's not forget that we just finished the 3 line of the animal mind last time. Okay, so here all the conversation is to say we are leaving the animal mind, but I still want to give you some characteristic of the animal mind, and precisely about the highest layer of that animal mind, meaning the line 3, meaning the platforms of the consensus of experts and of the dominant culture as dictated by the ruling class. No question, no comment. If nothing, we can keep on.
Yeah, let's see where he takes it.
Socrates, if you could persuade all men to think so, as you do me, there would be more peace and less evils in this world of ours.
But it is impossible, Theodore, either that evils should be abolished, for there must ever be some principle antagonistic to the good, or that they should take up their abode among the gods. No, they must range this mortal nature in this world of ours, and there is no help for it. And this is just the reason why we should try to flee away from this to the other life with all possible speed. Now, by this flight, I mean the making oneself as like to God as is possible for man. And this likeness consists in becoming just and holy with the highest intelligence. But alas, my friend, 'tis by no means easy to persuade people that, after all, it is not for the sake of that, for which most men tell us we ought to shun vice and to pursue virtue, but we are bound to practice the one and not the other. That is, merely that one may be thought not bad, or to be positively good, for all this is what they call old wives' gossip, as it seems to me. No, let us state the truth thus. God is in no way and in none of his dealings unjust. On the contrary, he's as just as it is possible to conceive, and there is nothing so like to him as any one of us who, on his own part, has learnt to be as just as he can be. On this point turns the question whether a man is really clever, or good for nothing, and a man only in name. Yes, it is the knowledge of this which is wisdom and true virtue, while ignorance of it shows a want of instruction and a baseness that cannot be mistaken. All the other kinds of cleverness and wisdom, as they're commonly thought to be, in places of political influence are simply vulgar, and in the arts are tradesmanlike. If therefore any of these men act unjustly or say or do what is unholy, far the best course to take with them is not to allow that they can be clever by wrongdoing. For as it is, they glory in their shame, and they flatter themselves they are being told they are no fools. No mere encumbrances of earth, but men, such as those, should be who have any hope of coming off safely in the turmoil of politics. We should therefore tell them the plain truth, that they are what they think they are not, all the more because they think they are not. For they do not know the penalty of injustice, which of all things they ought least to be ignorant of. It is not what they suppose, stripes or capital punishment, nothing of which in many cases has to be borne by the unrighteous. No, it is a penalty for which there is no escape.
Of what then do you speak?
My dear friend, there are two examples set before us in the order of things, that of the godlike, which is most blessed, that of the godless, which is most miserable. Now those who from stupidity and utter want of intelligence do not see that this is so are unconscious that they get more and more like the one through their unrighteous acts, and more unlike the other. And the penalty of this ignorance they pay by living the life, the example of which they are bring themselves to resemble. And if we tell them that if they don't cease from that cleverness of theirs, in the other life they will never find entrance into that blessed abode that is free of all evil, will pass a groveling existence in this lower world, like to their present sojourn upon it, bad in company with bad. If we tell them this, they will more than ever regard themselves as clever fellows who are up to anything, being lectured by a parcel of fools.
Sorry, you see that those last lines are marvelous, okay? When past a groveling existence in this lower world, the animal mind, lie to their present sojourn upon it, bad in company with bad. If we tell them this, they would more than ever regard themselves as clever fellows who are up to anything, being lectured by a parcel of fools. Okay, so the parcel of fools are precisely the Semyon two getting together to impose their stuff, and when they succeed to impose their stuff, it's called Semyon three.
So the panel of experts is the parcel of fools.
Absolutely. And the group of plutocrats.
Oh, pity them.
Okay.
That is true indeed, Socrates. Oops.
No, I say it's so extraordinary that 24 centuries ago, it has been explained in a so clear manner. Sorry.
And yet we keep on going through these cycles
Yeah, we're still
again and again.
So
I pray we are truly ready to graduate into the next cycle of our existence, of our understanding.
Yeah, and I hope every one of you would propagate the Theaetetus.
It's amazing.
Okay, so you said that is true indeed, Socrates? Indeed it
Yep.
is.
You are on.
Indeed it is. There is one result, however, from which they cannot escape. If they hold a private conversation, giving and hearing reasons on the course of life they so disparage, and consent like men to stand their ground without running like cowards for some considerable time, then, my good sir, they get strangely out of temper with themselves at the end of the argument, and all that...
Oh, I have to interrupt here. I have to interrupt here. They are going through this right now, are they not? They just cannot see why the rest of us will not get with their program. They think their program is so smart and they think it's going to work, and the rest of us should just fall in line with it, and they are just gnashing their teeth that we will not come into line with their program.
You got an A+ for that, Susie.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. Sorry. This is amazing.
Very noticeable
in
history, Susan, isn't it?
I need to mute myself, but this is amazing.
They get strangely out of temper with themselves at the end of the argument, and all that fine eloquence of theirs fades away, so that they seem no better than boys. However, on these subjects, as the discussion of them at present is out of place, let us say no more. Or our first argument will be overwhelmed by the flood of ideas that will pour in upon us. Let us then, if you please, return to our former inquiries.
I confess that to me, Socrates, these extra subjects are fully as pleasant to hear about, for they are easier for one of my age to follow up. However, as you wish it, let us go back again to our former subject.
Well then, I think we were about that. We were about that point of the argument where we affirmed that those who take for their axiom that being is but movement, and that what seems to each is so to him to whom it seems, are ready to insist that in things in general, and especially in questions of justice, whatever views the city may have adopted is such as the expression of her opinion on the subject. To her they are just, so long as they are in force. But when the question turns on what is her real interest, we maintain that no man was presumptuous enough in this case to venture on the assertion that what a state has enacted believing it to be beneficial to itself, but also is so for as long a time as the enactment remains. Unless indeed we are talking about what is beneficial in name only, which of course would be a mere satire on the subject of our conversation.
It would indeed.
So don't let him talk of the mere name, but the reality of that which under the name of beneficial is the subject of our inquiry.
Theodorus?
Assuredly not.
Then whatever she means by the name, that of course she aims at in her legislation and all the laws to the best of her belief and her power, she enacts with a view to her own interest especially. Is there any other end she has in view in making laws?
Oops, I'm sorry, I'm lost.
Okay. You
Assuredly not.
Yeah, we at
You
page
just-
71. We're at page 71, and you have the
Okay,
number.
right, assuredly not.
Does then a state always succeed in the same, or does every a government make occasional mistakes?
I think that it is often mistaken.
Perhaps from the following consideration, anyone might be yet more likely to form the same conclusion. I mean, if you were to put the question respecting the entire class of things, which includes the useful, that, of course, is one that in its very nature extends also to the future. For whenever we legislate, we enact our laws with the hope and belief that they will be beneficial for times yet to come. That is to speak correctly, for the future.
Of course.
Come then, let us ask Protagoras, or some of those who maintain his opinions, this question. You say, gentlemen, that man is the measure of all things, of white, heavy, light, all qualities and conditions of that kind whatsoever. For as he has in himself the criterion of them, whatever he feels, believing it to be such, is so to him, and constitutes true belief. Now, is this not so?
It is so.
But has he also in himself, Protagoras, we shall say, a criterion of what will be? Do things happen exactly as one thinks they will happen when one has formed a certain opinion about them? For instance, in the feeling of heat, when some person ignorant of medicine has conceived the idea that a fever will seize him, and then will be in him a certain feverishness, but another, a physician, forms a contrary opinion, according to the opinion of which are we to say that the result will be? Or will it be according to both opinions? Will the patient not feel hot and feverish to the physician, but feel both to himself?
That would be absurd indeed.
Yet I suppose on the sweetness or sourness that is yet to be in wine, the opinion of the cultivator alone, and not that of the harp player, is of authority.
Of course.
Nor again would a trainer in boys' exercises be likely to judge better than a musician whether a piece of music when played will be in good or bad tune. Though afterwards, when it is played, the trainer may have ear enough to think it is correct.
Certainly not.
Well, the judgment of one to whom a dinner is to be given, he being no adept at cookery, while the banquet is in preparation, will be of less weight than that of the cook respecting the pleasure that is in store for him. For observe, we are not at present to insist in our argument on the pleasure that each one now feels or has felt, but simply on the question whether, in what will seem and therefore be pleasant to each, every man is the best judge for himself. Would you, Protagoras, be a better judge beforehand than any of the unlearned of what would be likely to carry conviction to each one of us if we went into court?
Why, Socrates, that is just the point in which Protagoras specially professed that he himself surpassed all others.
Of course, my good sir, he did. If he had not, no one would have conversed with him on payment of a large fee. I mean, if he had not tried to persuade his pupils that no seer, and indeed nobody else in the world, was likely to judge better not only what was, but what would seem and be convincing, than each man for himself.
Most true.
Then both legislations and their utility are concerned with the future, and all will readily grant that of necessity a state must, in enacting laws, often fail in securing its highest and truest interest.
Certainly.
Then we shall give a fair reply to your master, if we tell him he is bound to allow that one man is wiser than another, and that, although such a person is a measure of truth, yet I, who have no such knowledge, am in no way bound to become a measure, a conclusion very different from that of the argument lately undertaken in his behalf, which insisted that I was a measure, whether I wished it or not.
It seems to me, Socrates, that the proposition is best refuted by that consideration, though indeed it is also refuted by this, viz., that it makes the opinion of others to be of authority, and those opinions have been shown to regard his statements as altogether untrue.
There are many other ways, Theodore, in which such a proposition as this might be refuted, that every opinion of every man must be true. But it is more difficult to prove that in such feelings as each one has at the time, which are the sources of our impressions and of the opinions founded on them. Such opinions are not true. Perhaps indeed it is not enough to say this. They may even be and perhaps are irrefragable. And those who affirm that they are plain and clear and therefore sure grounds of knowledge may possibly assert what is really the case. And thus our friend Theaetetus is not far from the mark in saying that perception and knowledge are the same thing. We must therefore look at our work of art a little closer, as the argument in defense of Protagoras told us to do. And we must examine his doctrine of being is only motion by ringing it to hear if it sounds cracked or whole. At all events, no small contest about it has arisen, and that with a numerous school.
Small, I should say not. Why, in Ionia, it is even gaining ground rapidly. The fact is, the followers of Theaetetus support his doctrine very heartily.
And therefore, friend Theodore, the more carefully we must look into it, and from the very beginning, according to the line they themselves take.
By all means, for indeed, Socrates, apropos of these Heracletians, or as you say, these followers of Homer, or others yet earlier, one can no more converse with the disciples themselves of this school of Ephesus, who profess to be well up in the doctrines, than one could with maniacs. For just like their own teachings, they are ever in motion, and as for staying on one subject or question, or quietly replying, or putting a question in their turn, this is no more in them than anything, or rather, what is not even a what? I can't see that word.
A not, meaning a nothing, a zero.
Oh, okay, a naught. Is greater compared with the utter absence of rest in these men? No. If you ask any of them anything, they drag forth, as if from a quiver, certain ambiguous wordlets and shoot them off. And if you try to get some account of this and to know what it really means, you will be hit by another term used in a newfangled sense, and so will never come to any conclusion in conversing with any of them. Indeed, they do not themselves do any better with each other, but they very carefully observe their own law of never letting anything stable remain either in the argument or in their own minds, thinking, I suppose, that stable is stationary. And with that, you know, they are openly at war. And even as far as they can, try to get rid of it altogether. Oh.
Perhaps, Theodore, you've only seen these men disputing and have never had an interview with them in their moments of peace. For they are no friends of yours. That kind of language, I suppose, they use to such disciples of theirs as they wish to make like themselves when they have a little more leisure.
Disciples indeed, my good sir. Why, with philosophers of that kind, no one is a disciple of another. They spring up like mushrooms from whatever source any of them may chance to have drawn his inspirations, and each one believe that the other knows nothing. From these men, then, as I was going on to say, you will never get any explanation if they can avoid giving it, or even by a stroke of luck. You must take the men themselves and consider them as a problem. Sorry. I'm sorry. Mushrooms grow best in a pile of dung.
The only thought I was thinking is they're not much different because they're like disciples and, you know, they're like gurus, right? It's like the modern, you know, culture of gurus and thought leaders. You know, I kind of think about that.
Perfect rapprochement.
Indeed, you speak quite reasonably, but have we not received this very problem in two ways and from two sources? From the ancients who used poetry to conceal their real meaning from the multitude, and who taught that the creation of all things expressed by ocean and Theaetetus is perpetual motion, and that nothing stands. And from the later philosophers who, as being more advanced, openly explained their doctrines to all, in order that the very cobblers may understand their wise sayings when they hear them, and may leave off stupidly thinking that some things stand and other things move, and on being told that everything moves, may hold them in due honor. But I had almost forgot that there are others who openly maintain the very contrary doctrine to these, as for example, that the so-called universe is unmovable, and other propositions which are affirmed by more than one Malesis or Parmenides in opposition to all these of the Ionian school. Such are that the universe is one and that it is self-contained and stands still because it has no place to move in. Now, my friend, how are we to deal with all these conflicting doctrines? From our gradual advance, we have fallen between the two without knowing it. And if we don't defeat them and get clear off, we shall be punished as boys are in the wrestling schools when they play at the game of the line, when they are seized by both sides and dragged to the camp of the enemy. It appears to me, therefore, that we ought to examine first the other side, against whom we first made a movement, the fluent school. And if we should think there is something in what they say, we will join them in dragging our own selves to their side in our efforts to get away from the others. Or if, on the other hand, the party who make the universe stand still should seem to speak more truly, we will run off to them and leave these people who would move even the immovable. And again, should we be of opinion that neither side has anything reasonable to say, we shall be ridiculous in supposing that we second-rate inquirers talk sense, and in expressing disapprobation of very old and very learned men. Consider then, Theodore, if it is worth our while to advance in the face of such a danger.
I should rather say, Socrates, it is not to be endured that we should not fully consider what each of the contending parties have to say.
Consider then we must, as you show, such zeal in the cause. It seems to me that our discussion about universal motion should begin with the inquiry. What do they mean in saying that all things move? What I intend to express may be put thus. Do they affirm that there is one kind of motion, or as I rather think that there are two? However, don't let this be my opinion alone. but do you share in it that we may suffer in common, if it must be? And now tell me, do you call it motion when something changes from one place to another, or even when it turns as on its own axis?
I do.
So let this be taken for one kind. But when there is no local movement, but a thing is growing old or becoming black from being white, or hard from soft, or undergoing any alteration of that kind, are we not justified in describing this as another kind of motion?
I think so.
Nay, you cannot avoid it. I reckon, therefore, two kinds of movement, alteration and motion in space.
And rightly.
Then after making this distinction, let us proceed to argue with those who say that everything has motion. And let us put to them this question. Do you mean that everything moves in both ways, that is, both by motion and by alteration? Or that some things have both kinds of motion, some only one?
Well, really, I don't know what to reply. I suppose they would say in both ways.
Why, if they do not, my friend, they will find that things both move and stand still. And the answer that all things are in motion will be just as incorrect as they stand still.
That is very true.
Then, since they must be in motion and non-motion cannot exist in any of them, it follows that all things move always with all the kinds of movement.
It cannot be otherwise.
Now then, mark well this conclusion of theirs. We said, I think, that they explain the origin of heat or whiteness or any other manifestation in this way. Each of these is produced from motion simultaneously with the sensation of it, and intermediately between the agent and the patient. The patient thus becomes sensitive, but not sensation, and the agent becomes of a certain quality, but not the quality itself. Perhaps then this word quality seems to you an outlandish term, and you not understand it in its general sense. Well, then hear about it in its several departments. The agent in such effect is not heat or whiteness. It is only that a thing becomes hot or white, and so on. For you remember, of course, that in our former discussion of this subject, we stated the case thus, that there is no self-existent one, nor any agent or patient taken alone, but that from both, united by a mutual relation and so producing the perceptions and the perceptible effects, the one kind of things becomes of a certain quality, and the other becomes sentient of it.
I remember that, of course.
Then let us dismiss all other considerations, and the inquiries whether things are so or not so, and keep strictly to the point which is the subject of our conversation, and put to them this question. You say, do you not, that all things have motion and flux?
Just so.
And with both kinds of motion that we have distinguished vis-a-vis motion in space and alteration.
Of course, if they are to have a complete or perfect motion.
Well now, if some things have only the former kind of motion, but not that of alteration, we should be able to say, I presume, what those things are that have the motion of flux.
That is so.
But as not even this is permanent, that what has flux should flow white, but it is ever changing, so that there is also a flux in this very quality, the whiteness, and a change to some other color, that it may not be found stationary in this respect. It is possible at any given time to describe anything as of a particular color, so as to give it a right name.
How can that be, Socrates, or anything else of the like kind, if it is always passing away while one names it as being in a state of flux?
What then are we to say about perception of any kind as that of seeing or hearing? Does it ever remain in the precise act of seeing or hearing?
I suppose it ought not, as everything is in a state of motion.
Then we must not say that we see a thing any more than that we don't see it, nor that we have any perception rather than not, if, as we affirm, all things move in all ways.
No, indeed.
But perception is knowledge, as both I and Theaetetus contended.
It was so.
Then our answer to the question, what is knowledge, amounted to this: that it is non-knowledge just as much as it is knowledge.
That seems to be the answer you gave.
Then our attempt to improve on the answer will prove not very successful when we try to demonstrate that all things are in motion in order that that reply may seem a correct one. For on the contrary, it has been shown that on the theory of all things in motion, every answer on whatever subject one may give is equally right, whether it says it is so or it is not so, or if you please, becomes so, that we may not make them the advocates of fixedness by using the term is.
You say rightly.
Except indeed, Theodore, that I said so and not so. For when we apply either term to anything, it ceases to be in motion, since not even it is not so allows of motion. No, we must establish some other kind of language for those who assert this doctrine, since at present they have no phrases in accordance with their own hypothesis, unless indeed not at all. Such a phrase might suit them best, being quite indefinite in its meaning.
Certainly this sort of talk is most suited to them.
Then now, Theodore, we have got rid of your friend Protagoras, and at present we refuse to concede to him that every man is the measure of everything, unless he be intelligent. We shall not allow that knowledge is perception, at least on the theory of universal motion, unless Theaetetus here has anything to say on the other side.
You have spoken very well, Socrates, for now that we have come to these conclusions, I also ought to be let off from replying to you, according to the agreements we made when the argument about Protagoras' doctrine should have come to an end.
No, Theodore, no. Not till...
Hang on.
Oops.
No, Theodore, no. Not till you and Socrates have fully discussed the views of those who maintain, on the other hand, that the universe stands still. For this, you know, you lately agreed to do.
What, Theaetetus? You, a young man, teach your seniors to be dishonest by breaking their promise? No, make up your mind to give Socrates your views on the subject that still remains.
I will if he wishes it, but I should have liked best to hear rather than to reply about the subject I speak of.
You challenge cavalry into the open field, Theaetetus, in challenging Socrates to a conversation. Do you therefore put your questions to him and you shall hear him?
But I don't think, Theodore, that I shall do as Theaetetus bids me in the matter he proposes to question me about.
Why shall you not do so?
Because I feel a sort of awe of Melissus and those others who assert that the universe stands still, and I fear lest we should consider their doctrine in an undignified way. And yet I fear them less than I do Parmenides, though they are many and he is one. But to me Parmenides appears, to quote the words of Homer, at once to be respected and feared as an adversary. For I had an interview with that man, you must know, when I was very young and he was far advanced in life. And he appeared to me to display a depth that showed true genius. I'm afraid that, therefore, that we may fail to understand his statements and even yet more fail to perceive his real meaning in making them. Nay, more, and what is most important, I fear that the subject which the argument has undertaken to discuss, the question, what is knowledge, will never be fully examined if so many topics keep pouring in upon us, and we comply with their demands upon our time. Besides, in addition to other considerations, the subject we are now mooting is endless in its bearings and aspects, and if one is to treat it as of a secondary importance, it would hardly meet with its deserts, while if pursued fully, it must be protracted so as to put the primary question about knowledge quite out of sight. Now, neither of these alternatives is right. We must rather try if we can deliver Theaetetus by our obstetric art of the sentiments he entertains respecting knowledge.
Well, if such is your pleasure, we will take that course.
Then give your attention once more, Theaetetus, to this point in the subject we have discussed. You said in your answer that perception was knowledge. Was it not
Yes.
so? Oops, sorry.
Yes.
If then anyone should put this question to you, by what does a person see black and white, and by what does he hear sounds of high or low pitch, you would reply, I suppose, by his eyes and his ears.
I should.
Well, this offhand use of words and phrases, when not put to the test of accuracy, is in general rather a mark of good breeding, as the contrary is pedantic. Nevertheless, it is sometimes necessary, just as now we are compelled to take hold of the answer you give, insofar as it is not correct. For consider, which is the more correct answer, that the organ by which we see is the eye or through which we see? And similarly, with the ear, do we hear by or through it?
Wow. That's a
seems-
spot to stop and ponder. I'm sorry.
No. I agree with you. I was going to say, why do you say wow, Susie?
Like I keep saying, I feel like what I'm going through with you guys is really far above my intellectual development or education. But I know my heart hears this.
Okay,
And
but you say wow because of the last paragraph. Okay, why?
we see through our eyes, we hear through our ears. But it is our heart, our spirit, that actually is absorbing and amplifying the understanding we can gain from what we hear and see. That's my best description of it.
Okay, you got another A+ for your answer, because precisely that is the nexus. Okay, I said that the animal mind is about the what, and the divine mind is about the why. Okay, so Socrates is not saying that the what is not important. Okay, which is the more correct answer? That the organ by which we see is the eye, that is the what. Okay, the eye is the organ by which we see. It's not false. Okay, or through which we see. So he was referring to the what dimension, the animal mind, and the why dimension, the divine mind. Okay, so in the Platonic dialogues, never assume that he is rejecting A versus B. Okay, most of the time it's a dialectical interaction between A and B. And you're right to have said wow, because it's a nexus of the dialogue.
This is just so amazing to me. And continually, I could just bow out and just spend some time on the floor weeping. This is amazing. This is amazing. Those of you I have gotten to know, I have tried to express, I am like a child learning to walk. But that is such a precious place to be. The whole universe opens up to you when you have a heart set, a mindset, an attitude of awe and wonder.
Absolutely.
That is where we are meant to live.
Yes, it means that the divine dimension has to be the charioteer, and the animal dimension, or the what dimension. Do you remember the image in the Republic in the chapter 3 or 4 used to represent the layers of the mind? You have the chariot, meaning the body. You have the two horses, meaning the intellect and the senses perception and the psyche. And you have the charioteer driving the chariot, okay, representing the divine dimension. Okay, and that small paragraph can be the equivalent of that image in the Republic, chapter 3 or chapter 4, I don't remember.
The spirit is meant to be in the driver's seat. The spirit is the charioteer.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
this soul, this psyche, is in the passenger seat
Absolutely.
on a journey of awe and
That's why
wonder.
it's so important to make sure that what we see and, you know, what we view and also what we hear, because it just channels right to the soul.
So it raises a question. Is there a difference between spirit and soul?
Okay, technically,
Very
okay?
much so.
Technically, the soul is the fourth layer, okay? And spirit, or in Greek, pneuma, is the fifth layer. Because the soul is the timeless form of beauty, and the spirit is the timeless form of goodness, okay? The spirit is agape, okay? The love for the potential for the sovereign mind in you and in others. So there is a small distinction between the two, because one corresponds to beauty and the other corresponds to the timeless form of goodness, or the superior emotions of agape, but both are part of the divine mind.
How about truth?
Truth is, okay, I will ask you the following question. When Socrates said that there is a unity of virtue, okay, the answer is in the answer to that question, why there is an unity of virtue, is the answer to your question. So try to find a word that would make beauty, goodness, and truth and unity.
Okay. I can't right now, so.
Okay, maybe I would like to keep this in mind, okay? And let's finish the reading for today. And at the end, I will remember to ask everyone that question, because that question is a difficult one, and it's a question of synthesis. So I would write a note. So at the end, I would ask everyone the same question. Think about that.
It's whatever 6 is, because you said 4, 5, and 6 was beauty, goodness, and truth. So whatever 6 is, whatever.
Well, 6 is truth, but there's a word that would
Right.
give the unity of the three, because as the phrase by Socrates or by Plato is the question of unity of virtue. Virtue being a synonym for the divine mind. Okay. So,
sorry.
okay. Dave, do you want to say something?
Well, finish your thought. Sorry, I just said question. Sorry.
No, I finished my thought.
What were the 2 Greek words that you used to distinguish between soul and spirit? Soul being one before spirit.
Yeah. Soul, soul is kalos, beauty. Okay. In Greek, they say kalos,
Right.
beauty for soul. And goodness is kagateon, but you can also say pneuma, P-N-E-U-M-A.
Right.
Okay.
What about
Pneuma?
logos?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think I like spirit. Say my father, he passes away. His soul goes to heaven, but his spirit lives on, like, in me through my memory. I'm
I
just
would say
putting
that
my,
in
like,
that
one
sense, I would say that his spirit, if his spirit stay with you, is rather the values that he gave you, the education that he gave you. But here, spirit is truly a technical word. It means a certain level of your mind development. Okay, so beauty, goodness, and truth. The Greek called the soul beauty, kalos.
Okay.
So
it's a totally different meaning.
Yes, yes. Here we are really speaking of technical words about the layers of the mind.
So soul is beauty?
Yeah, beauty for the Greek. Okay, kalos, K-L-A-L-O-S.
And spirit is
Pneuma, P-N-E-U-M-A.
and what's the English word for that?
It's spirit, okay, or it's the wind, okay, like in pneumatic, for example, okay.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah, all right.
Okay, pneumatic comes from pneuma, it's the air, the wind, but the spiritual air, okay, because
Like
spirit is something that would move into the ether, into the spiritual dimension.
like emotion.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
right there, when Quan said pneuma, breath,
Yeah. Yeah.
that is where my understanding would come in. And I want to say, first and foremost, I do not believe Christianity has a monopoly on the truth.
Oh.
And that all of our religions have been corrupted to different degrees.
Wow.
So
Don't tell.
every single person is free to develop on their journey of truth. But to my understanding, we are spirit, soul, and body. Man breathed, no. God breathed into Adam and he became a living soul. God's breath is our spirit within us, and we have a body, and the soul kind of develops as a way of just connecting to the natural world, this experience called life. But our spirit, God is a spirit. And so our spirit is that part of us that he can speak to, that he fellowships with. And then our spirit within us tries to relate to our soul as we grow in this epistemological growth.
Absolutely.
He also spoke the world into existence.
Yes. Yes, but let's not forget that in Greek, it means logos, okay? And the Greek word logos is a very rich one. And the six layers of the mind, you can call it logos 1, logos 2, logos 3, logos 4, logos 5, logos 6, okay? I said Samayon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but someone else could have said logos 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's equivalent.
I was gonna make a random guess. I was thinking maybe logos was the word you were looking for the sixth layer, but now you just
no. Well,
I have one more guess though.
I think that you have a good intuition, because logos can be, because the English word to what I thought, which is the unity of virtue, I have to admit that logos can be a synonym. So I would say that yes, I accept logos as an answer, but try to think to an English word.
Oh, English word, okay.
Because logos
Mind
has the 6 layers. Mind, yes. Wow. If you say mind 1 to 6 is acceptable, but another word. Think to another word, the same word that would be more of the divine, even if you're right. Okay, the divine is from 1 to 6, because a person who is truly integrated does not reject 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 is under the guidance of 4, 5, 6.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I was thinking, but you place intellect at the lower half.
Yes, intellect is number 2.
Okay, because that's the other word I would have, if we're thinking English words. So yeah, I'll leave it to somebody else to
and I
score.
have to say that, yes, and I have to say that David is not entirely wrong, because in the English tradition, when intellect is with a capital I, it's equal to the word that I'm thinking about.
Is it God?
Okay, I will give the answer. It's awareness.
Ah,
What, intellect and awareness?
Yes, because in the English philosophical tradition, when you capitalize the I of intellect, is equal to awareness, to the 3 layers, to the 3 upper layers of 4, 5, 6.
what Greek word would you assign to that?
Well, I think that the Greek, the Platonic tradition gave them already. I don't have one word, but three. Kalos for beauty, kagatos for goodness, and aletheia for truth.
So, Paul, what about consciousness? Is that awareness?
Yes, and I would say that David make me think a little bit. If I have to choose one word for kalos, kagatos, and aletheia in Greek, I would have chosen the word in Greek meaning infinite, and infinite in Greek is aperon, A-P-E-I-R-O-N, aperon.
I got a question. Is there like a general significance between like a word, okay, like intellect, and then capitalizing it? Like I know there's another term, the term being. There's like a being with a small b and a being with a capital B.
Yes.
Like, is there kind
being,
of a significance to that?
Yes, but being is another synonym for the sixth line, okay? Truth.
What I'm trying to get at is like, when should I use a capital letter for a word? Like,
when is the divine kingdom, when it's about beauty, goodness, and truth.
so when you're talking about like epistemological,
Yes.
when you're talking like the higher truths, that's that's in capital letters.
Yes, epistemological comes from episteme, okay, and episteme is the word for 4, 5, and 6 together. Episteme means knowledge, and 1, 2, 3 together is called doxa, D-O-X-A, opinion, and 4, 5, 6 together is called episteme, knowledge, E-P-I-S-T-E-M-E. Hence, epistemological development.
Yeah.
One thing that the whole conversation overall I find is a takeaway for English readers, right? Like the Greek, classical Greek is so rich. Curse, a pox upon the people that, got this out of the schools. Like everybody should be learning classical Greek because it's just richer, so much richer in its content, right? Because I heard this discussion, I was also thinking about, okay, where does the nous fit into that? That's another one, noosphere, and I feel that's like associated with mind. And there's so many. Psyche is technically in the old Greek idea, right? That's the thing that leaves you at death, nespa. So like there's all these words they're putting, but it's because they have these developed concepts, and so they're putting a name on these things, and we just have these generic terms, almost not generic, but it's
derived.
Yeah, it's humbling.
By the way, nous is a synonym for pneuma, okay, for the agape level, for the number 5. And what I said, I wanted to say that I am a conspiracy theorist. The fact that they got rid of Greek and Latin is part of the process of dumbing down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no good argument for like what for removing it all. There's just not a good.
Yeah, I wish I knew.
Oh, sorry.
I wish I knew more like the Oriental languages, Chinese, India,
Sanskrit.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this is where you're coming from, Quan. Is you have so many terms that are they're kind of foreign to me, and it'll take a while to learn.
Yeah, but I would like to give an advice. Okay, you better know your own tradition first, which is the Greek one.
Yeah.
But just even in this discussion, that perception is knowledge. It's like everything in me wants to say, perception is just the beginning of knowledge. But knowledge itself is a never-ending journey. And then just a few minutes ago, we were talking about the word word. But the reality is the word encompasses so much. contains so much. But there needs to not be a container. There needs to not be walls. Because everything is such a journey of exploration and growth. Growth towards beauty, goodness, and truth.
Yes.
So I'm just really grateful that Matt describes it as, you know, the electric fence constructed around our thinking. And that is so falling away in this season. And we are all embarking as a species into a whole fresh journey of growth and exploration of what it means to be human, of who we are and how we organize ourselves and what principles we choose to allow in that organization.
We still have another 20 minutes. What I suggest, we already at page 83. We can stop here, but I would like you guys to read the last two paragraphs of page 83 because they are very interesting and they will feed the conversation for the last 15 minutes. Is it okay with you?
Yep.
Can we read the next paragraph?
The next two, Theaetetus, it seems to me Socrates, and after the answer by Socrates, why? Those 8 lines would feed the next 20 minutes of conversation, I guarantee you.
I think the next paragraph is important.
Yes, okay, so Theaetetus and after Socrates.
Yeah, okay. It seems to me, Socrates, that our senses are rather the means than the instruments of perception.
Well, I should say it would be rather strange, my dear boy, if many distinct senses reside in us, as if we're so many wooden horses, instead of all these sensations centering in some one faculty, whether it be soul or whatever we're to call it, by which we perceive whatever is perceptible through these senses as through instruments.
Okay, let's discuss those 10 lines for the rest of the 15-20 minutes that we have. Let's go.
That was an important paragraph, that one, and it comes back to what Sally was saying about perception and knowledge, and this idea that sense perception through the organs is, you know, one thing, but the ability to discern through senses. In other words, the senses are merely instruments for us to understand. They are not the understanding themselves.
Quite right.
Oh, yeah, we have the brain, all the senses go into the brain, and somehow the brain interprets all this, but then it goes somewhere else that we really don't know, like our soul part. And then, is that where the decision is made? I don't know. Or is it just the brain doing it?
Okay, you said a very important word, decision, and I want to read it again. I should say it would be rather strange, my dear boy, if many distinct senses reside in us, as if we were so many wooden horses, instead of all these sensations centering in some one faculty, whether it be the soul or whatever we are to call it, by which we perceive whatever is perceptible through these senses as through instruments. Do you remember the metaphor of the chariot with the horses? The horses are the senses and the emotions, okay? And in what way that paragraph remind us of the metaphor?
We don't really know what's going on, like for sure.
Okay, there is the idea that you have to master the horses.
Yeah. Well, of course, yeah.
In the image of the Republic, you only have 2 horses, okay? But here you have many horses because in the image of the Republic, 1 horse represents all the senses and the second horse represents the emotion, okay? But you can imagine that you have 6 horses. That's okay too.
I love that idea. I'm sorry.
I think of emotions, like we have like three parts of our brain, and the emotions come from like the lower parts of the brain, where our intellect is our cerebellum, like the top part, that's our thinking part, and they're all kind of coordinated. But the emotions come from the lower parts, which is the same with animals. Even lizards and frogs have like they have these emotions where, but they don't have the intellect like we humans do.
Exact. But here I would like to make a distinction. Philosophically speaking, the cortex, which is the seat of wording and of concept, the limbic system, which is the seat of emotions, and the lower part of the cerebellum, which is more the seat of instinct and so on. Philosophically, those three stages that are distinguished biologically, philosophically, they are all on the line 2, okay, the intellect. Because most of the time we think that the intellect is only wording and images and concept. That is right. But what is under the wording, the images, and the concepts are the emotions, okay? So philosophically, it's all in line 2, because why do you remember something? I asked that question. Why do you remember something?
Well, for me, I'm pretty sure it's an emotion that helps me remember.
Yes, either an
It's
images or a word need an emotional glue to make you remember it. That emotion can be positive, like joy, or that emotion can be negative, like anger. But you need an emotional
fear.
glue, or fear, absolutely. You need an emotional glue to remember a concept or images. Okay, concept are words. So philosophically, what you describe at the 3 biological stages, the cortex, the limbic system, and the cerebrum, they are perceived as only on the same platform, meaning the level 2, semeion 2, or logos 2.
And I believe Quan said the horses need to be trained. And that brought up for me the idea of meekness. Meek is talked about in scripture.
Exactly.
I live out in the country and I have Amish communities near me. And the idea of meekness is a horse that is well trained. It is power that is trained to go the right direction.
So when you say training, do you mean training your emotions?
We learn through wisdom to control our emotions instead of our emotions controlling us.
Yeah.
And
But
when you get to a place of being able to join together the emotion with the truth and the beauty, now you've got some real power headed in the right direction.
Yes, I make the distinction an hour ago between the what dimension, the animal kingdom, and the why dimension, the divine kingdom. Here, there is another fundamental distinction. Susan say there is a possibility of training, okay? That is for the animal kingdom. But for the divine kingdom, what is the key word?
Don't know.
Okay, it's an, oh, sorry, go ahead, Helen.
Oh, I was just saying a decision or a will to do the right thing.
Interesting.
I was going to say agreement.
I would say a will has to do something with what I would like to hear. I give you a clue. There is a Latin word meaning to bring forth what is from within, okay? To bring forth what is from within. which is beauty, goodness, and truth. And what is the English word that means, that is coming from that Latin word meaning to bring forth what is from within?
Birth or manifest?
No, no, it's a very ordinary word.
Taming.
No,
I mean, I know because you've said it. I've heard you say it, but I'll let
go,
somebody else.
David.
Well, it's
Tell us.
educare, educere.
Yes, educare, as Dave just said, is the Latin word meaning to bring forth what is from within. And what is the English word that resembles the most to educare?
Education.
Yes, education. Okay, so that's the difference between 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3.
Wait, hold on. We need to go over that path again. To bring forth from within,
Yes,
what is being birthed from wisdom, beauty, and truth is the actual true meaning of educate.
exact. Education means to bring
Oh
forth
my
what is
gosh.
within. Okay, so okay, now I ask the question, why do I make that distinction? What is the subtlety here between training and between education? If education is educare, to bring forth what is within, meaning to bring forth what is naturally in us at birth, because we are at the image of the divine word. What is instruction then? What is instruction then?
Midwifery.
It's bringing forth a memory of your
Exact,
innate
exact.
whatever.
Exact, to bring forth a memory. But how is a memory is created?
Well, with emotion.
Exact, but how is an emotion is created?
Through senses, you want to like spur.
Yeah, it's through the senses.
Exact. Wow. An
We're living-
emotion is, yes, yes. I heard Paul said the answer, having an experience. Okay, meaning that you are subjected to a training. Okay, like what Susan said with the horses. Okay, if you want to train a horse, you have to have a relation with the horse. You have to submit him to repetition of movement and so on. So the distinction between the animal mind is that the animal mind is the stuff that can be conditioned, that can be trained, that can be instructed, that can be brainwashed, that can be predictively programmed, etc. Okay, that is the Aristotelian perspective. Okay, la tabula rasa. Okay, the blank slate, meaning that.
Okay, but hold on. We have to backtrack again. I am so sorry. Be patient with me. You all have no idea what is happening here. Because what you are talking about is that we have to bring this animal back into the memory of its original identity from the divine.
Exact, and that is education, educare, to remember beauty, goodness, and truth.
Oh my God.
Because if you don't remember beauty, goodness, and truth, you will be the victim of the program imposed by others.
Oh my God.
There's a fun little quote.
So you,
Sorry, go ahead.
these experiences and through our senses and everything, and our brains, and all these things, they got all kind of harmonized together. And the key to harmonizing is through this truth, beauty, and goodness. And then once it harmonizes, you're kind of in touch with that. I hate to call it divine, but I don't have another word for it. And
Wow.
then it'll help with all those memories and experiences to make it'll just all come easier because it's all harmonized.
Or to use Plato image, the charioteer will be awakened and will take care of the chariot and of the horses.
And
Okay.
and it almost run itself after.
No, the charioteer is awakened. He's present in his body. Okay, because the charioteer, don't forget, represent the presence of the divine, represent the presence of the beauty, the goodness, and the truth. And beauty, goodness, the truth would be at the driver's seat. Okay, would be the charioteer. Because if you don't awaken or you don't remember beauty, goodness, and truth, it means that the horses, it means that your chariot and your horses will be controlled by others, because the charioteer, the charioteer, is not present to control your chariot and your horses.
I
Is
was
the
just thinking
It's
about
just a perfect, I'm sorry.
these new computerized cars they have. You don't get to drive your car anymore. The computer handles it for you.
That's not me. No way.
It sounds like the same charioteer from the Mahabharata.
Explain.
Well, in the Mahabharata, isn't there Arjuna is the charioteer, and he's it's on the eve of a battle. And I think Arjuna is the divine in that story.
Yeah.
I just think it's so amazing that what we're looking at in our world today, that oligarchical system has tried to suppress knowledge and education so that as many people as possible are trapped in that animal way of thinking, so that we do not return or even discover that divine portion of ourselves. Because they have chosen to live in and try to reign over the animal. They don't want to be connected with the actual divine. They want to make themselves gods. And they want to rule over us.
Absolutely.
But as we learn to reconnect with the divine within ourselves,
We need
and
some teenagers
remember
here.
who we are, then they lose power.
Exactly. And Plato called it anamnesis, A-N-A-M-N-E-S-I-S, meaning to remember. But to remember what? To remember beauty, goodness, and truth, or to remember your soul, to remember to be the charioteer.
Beauty,
There's
goodness, and truth is what you came from.
There's nothing new in
Beauty,
this.
goodness. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was about to say there's nothing new in this. Yes, we are living through strange times and everything like that, but the people that are trying to control us now have always been there.
Absolutely. Well, let's not forget that in the village of 500 people 10,000 years ago, there were 20 guys who were very good with the intellect, and they imposed the Samayan 3, and it lasted since the last 10,000 years.
Another thing I've learned from these lessons, nothing that I already didn't know, but just to reinforce the learning how to ask the right questions.
Yeah, that's the trick, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Kelly, you're already in the divine kingdom when you're capable to say that.
Yeah.
Let's not
Yeah.
forget.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
I think the aim with Agape, as Quana said, is that you keep asking these questions every day of your life.
Absolutely, and that's
Never
the
end.
essence.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pon.
So much.
So, Quan, do you call like educare, like that's sort of like making it real, like the truth becomes a reality in your life, like whatever you receive, any revelation. Is that how you would define educare, like it becomes it's a reality in your whole being.
Yes,
You know, it's kind of like you walk the talk now.
exact. Because beauty, goodness, and truth are what I call the passive mode of the divine dimension. But there is an active mode of the divine dimension. And to beauty, the active mode is justice. Okay, goodness, the active mode is valor and exploration. And beauty is also, goodness is also moderation. And truth, the active mode is wisdom. Okay, so you have the three passive modes, which are beauty, goodness, and truth. And you have the active mode, which is called by the ancients the four cardinal virtues of innocence, of justice, of valor, of humanity, and of wisdom. And here, those that active dimensions of the divine kingdom will manifest in your daily life.
Okay, Kwan, I have to get that written down. Beauty is
Yes.
equal to justice. Goodness is equal to valor.
And humanity.
Truth.
And
What is
truth
it?
is
Valor of humanity?
valor and humanity, and humanity.
Oh, and humanity. Okay.
Okay, and wisdom is truth, of course.
Yeah. And in love, of course, love. You know, you become more expansive
Love
and
reigns
very
over
love,
all of them.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that love with all of them. Okay, I said that we can use mind 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can use logos 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can say semaion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or we can say love 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Wow. Now, Dave is still on here, isn't he?
Yes, he's
Yeah.
under rising tide.
If you all will forgive me for being so bold, Dave, I just really want to bless you. I literally felt the transition when you began to read Socrates, from you moving out of your head into your heart, into the place of the poet. You are a poet and a philosopher and an artist, but the poet is the wellspring that you live from, where your beauty flows from. And you did an excellent job reading Socrates for us tonight. I just really want to bless you, Dave. You are a gifted poet.
Certainly had an effect on you, didn't it, Susan?
I was just
Wow.
trying to channel Bruce as my daemon to pretty much, that was what I was trying to do.
This is good. Very good.
I appreciate Bruce. That's not easy, right? Socrates is,
He's a tough act to follow.
yeah, no, bless his heart. I tried to channel him. I was like,
What is the what do you want to call the like, so I have Encyclopedia Britannica here. What is the version that you guys are reading? Because it's a good version.
It's a
Oh,
version. Oh, sorry, go Dave.
it's linked in the emails.
Oh, it is?
Like,
Okay.
yeah, click that. It's in archive. I don't know the specific version. I guess Quan knows, but you can get the link by just clicking in the RT Rising Tide emails.
It's an old version from 1875. It's a version
Really?
from the time when people were still capable to read Greek. And the translator is Paley, Paley. He's not very well known, but what is important is from the 19th century, 1875. Once again, at a moment when people still knew how to read Greek. That's why you see in the notes that you have the Greek alphabets for certain names, because it was understood during that time that most educated people would be capable to read Greek.
Okay, and so the journey continues.
Exact. So I think that thank you for coming today, and
Thank
hoping
you.
thank you to, and hoping to see all of you next Wednesday.
Oh, thank you,
Thank
Juan.
you.
See y'all
Yeah.
there.
Yes, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you
Yeah.
next week.
Good night, everybody.